I was a student teacher in 1987, which means I was done with my education, but I had to learn underneath a really good teacher. And so I had this master teacher. She was incredible. And I learned everything. I didn't learn anything in college. I learned everything from her, right? You know, in her classroom with her cute little first graders. It was great. I learned phonics from her because when I was in school, they taught me Dick and Jane. So it wasn't good teaching. Thank God my parents were helping me learn how to read. But so I learned phonics in college. And all these lights came on. Now I know why you put an E at the end or you don't put an E at the end. Now I know why you double a consonant when you add ing. Like it all started to make sense to me. I'd had to memorize it before. Now I knew why. Because phonics is, you know, there's a structure. It teaches you why. So anyway, I learned that from her. I learned how to run a classroom, how to be a great teacher from her. But every single day, Apollo, I would witness as the teacher next door would abuse the children. Okay, these were first graders. They came up to her waist. Mm-hmm. Every day I watched while she would grab them, yank them like this, and scream in their little faces like this.
She's sick.
Angry.
She's sick.
She was sick. Very angry. And I will tell you what she hated. She hated little boys. And she picked on the wiggly little boys. And that offended me deeply. I have a son who's a wiggly little boy. You know what? He's the smartest dang person I know. The kid builds rockets for Elon Musk. He works for SpaceX.
Really?
Yes, my son. He's amazing. Okay? Amazingly smart young man. But I always called him Tasmanian Devil because he was always moving, right?
Whirlwind.
God made him that way because he had important work for my son to do. Well, this lady, she would pick on boys like my son. You know, because they wouldn't sit like a little girl all day and, you know, act like a girl for 7 hours a day, filling in bubbles, bored out of their minds, right? Okay, she didn't understand boys. She abused boys. So I witnessed it every single day. So I went to my master teacher and I said, I'm learning that I'm a mandated reporter of child abuse. Mm-hmm. And I see child abuse. It's the teacher next door. What do I do? She set me down that day. She said, Rebecca, today is the day you learn about teacher unions. She said, we know she's abusive, but the district can't get rid of her because the so-called teacher unions are defending her job. And at that time, I thought it was this tenure, you know, that is the problem. That's not the bigger problem. The bigger problem is collective bargaining. So the so-called unions were able to manipulate the politicians that they control, and even some they didn't control. They manipulated with their propaganda, and they were able to get government unions first of all, government unions were illegal in this country. Then all of a sudden they weren't because of all their lobbying. And then all of a sudden they got the right to collectively bargain. Well, teachers and others think collective bargaining, oh, it's the greatest thing in the world because I have a big paycheck and a pension. No, it's the worst thing in the world. Because what it did is it removed parents from the process. Parents are no longer allowed in the negotiation. But their children are the customer? That's wicked, okay? And I'm sorry to say, but now the teaching profession, people who used to go into the profession because they wanted to serve and because they loved children and because they were well educated and they wanted to educate the children, now their main focus is how much do I get paid and I want my pension. That's broken my heart, but how I've seen the teaching profession morph from servants to putting their hand out for more. It's disgusting. And I don't mean to sound offensive. I love teachers, good ones. I love good teachers, but I'm offended by people that come into my profession with their hand out for money and pension while they're damaging little kids. And they are. Their union is damaging, destroying families and kids. So once I saw this abuse and found out it was the union, and I was 20, 22. I didn't know much. I thought it was all rainbows, right? So I was just shocked. But I knew I didn't want to pay that union. So when I, a few months later, signed my first contract as a teacher, union comes in, they say, sign here. I said, no, thank you. I don't want to join your union. Well, why not? We give you blah, 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 blah. I said, because you allow people to abuse little children, and I'm against that. And you know what they said to me, Apollo?
You're going to regret it.
No, that I could have lived with that because, okay, whatever, I can handle that. No, they said, you want to teach? You'll sign. And that's when I found out that thanks to a U.S. Supreme Court decision, Abood versus Detroit Board of Education in 1977, since that decision, I was forced by law as a condition of employment to pay them by law.
That's not freedom.
That is not freedom. That is tyranny. And it's also forced speech. They were forcing me to fund the speech and the behavior and the politics and the abuse of this wicked system. So basically, this is how it works. Since 1977, every single government employee in the United States of America who is part of a government union, think about it. That's teachers, cops, firefighters, DMV workers, CDC employees, FBI, CIA, not the big guys at FBI, but everybody under them, unionized, CIA, DOJ, the Department of Ed at all levels, state levels, national level. We're talking millions and millions and millions of people, all forced to fund a union as a condition of employment. A union that is run by communists and purposely trying to infiltrate the United States of America to destroy it. Okay? And all these people think, or most of them, oh, great, this union's going to get me a raise or whatever. In the beginning, people, they knew they didn't want these unions, but it was forced on them. Okay, so it's forced on all of us. So I mean, it's obvious that God prepared me for what was coming later in my life, because why at 22 I was knowing this stuff, right? It's like, what 22-year-old teacher even knows this stuff? Well, thank God I learned it, and I had a master teacher who understood and knew what to tell me. So this is what I discovered. The unions have been able to get away with this wicked scheme, first of all, because they controlled the Supreme Court in the 70s, but because they would tell the public through their propaganda, oh, no one is forced to be a member of the unions. Nobody's forced to pay dues. And so the American people believed them. Mm-hmm. What's the truth? I wasn't forced to be a member. I didn't have to check the box, I'm a member. But I was forced to accept their representation. And I was forced to pay fees. Not dues, because I'm not a member. I had to pay fees. Okay, the difference between dues and fees when I was a first-year teacher was like $35 a year. So I'm paying hundreds and hundreds a year to this wicked organization as a non-member. And by the way, because I was a non-member, I didn't get a vote. I didn't get to go to their meetings. And they denied me their liability insurance. So, if they, make sure that I get sued or something, because they set teachers up all the time, cause horrible things to happen to them. We can go into that later if you want. But so I didn't get their liability insurance, which teachers so desperately want, because I wouldn't be a member of their club. But I was forced to pay them. That was the most wicked scheme I had ever heard of. So my whole career, I pushed back as a non-member fee payer, paying all these fees, being forced, we'd have a weekly staff meetings with our principal, and the principal at one point every week would have to step out while the union stepped in and tried to manipulate us all, convince us that letting parents choose where their kids are educated and how their kids are educated is evil and is going to destroy the schools. And I mean, it was unbelievable. I was like, these people are crazy.
They're not teachers.
Who?
The unions, the union members.
Oh. Yeah, the union members are teachers, but they get manipulated by the union leaders.
Leaders, not the members, yeah.
I'm so glad you asked this, because National Education Association, NEA, they're really good at making themselves look like teachers. Most of their leaders taught in the classroom for a time. Okay. One of them was even a kindergarten teacher. It looked so sweet. Okay. But American Federation of Teachers, which is the smaller, the president of that, Randy Weingarten, this nasty lady that people know, if you've seen her, you know how nasty she is. She taught 1 year. We FOIA'd her work record. 1 year she taught. Why did she do that? So she could say she's a teacher. These people aren't teachers. They're community organizers. What's a community organizer? It's somebody who works for the Communist Party and riles people up and, has all these, protests and riots and all that. Oh, you see a riot on TV? You see a protest, I watch it, I go, yeah, the unions are behind that. I know, because I see their tactics. Just like when we saw Obama's sign, oh yeah, he's a communist. Because there's, they've got a fist or whatever on there that gives it away. Hope, yeah, hope and change. Boy, did he
the bright future, Lenin.
Yeah, unbelievable. Boy, did he bring change. And now it's hopeless, right? Not hopeless, but we feel hopeless. So anyway, I taught 28 years. Apollo, I'd still be teaching if it wasn't so stinking corrupt. So I loved my job. I miss my students so much it hurts. And I was a great teacher. I dedicated everything, first to my family and then to my students. And so I got about, I taught 28 years, so it might have been about 20 years in, 19, 20 years in. I thought, you know what? I have to pay these evil people, but I don't have a voice. And I kept talking to teachers, and they all agreed with me that all this crazy stuff, they didn't want the kids to be sexualized. They didn't want this crazy stuff. So I said, I'm going to become a full member, and I'm going to become a union rep. And I did. So I became a union rep. I stood up. I was a representative for 3 years, just long enough to realize these people are communists. I'm very glad I was on the inside as a union rep. It made me a much better plaintiff later when I sued them because they couldn't lie. They could tell their lies. It's very interesting that 0 union leaders will debate me. And I've asked, why won't they debate me? Because I know the truth.
Yes.
They'll spew some lie and I'll say, no, this is the truth. They won't talk to me. So that's very, very telling, right? So anyway, I become a union rep. I serve on the executive board of my local union. I'm going to state level California Teacher Association meetings. And I'll just tell one story. My husband went with me. My husband taught 42 years, a music professor, very dedicated to his students. He would have taught longer too if it didn't get so corrupt. It got to where he was the director of the School of Music and Dance at San Diego State University. It got to where he couldn't even bring a great program to the students because the unions were destroying it so much. They were forcing him to keep, quote, professors who were, just horrible. He couldn't get rid of them because of the union. So he finally quit teaching too. He retired. I actually resigned. I'm not retired. So anyway, so I'm a union rep, and my husband and I go to this California Teacher Association annual leadership meeting, and we walk in the expo center, and we go, we got to be in the wrong place because every booth in that expo was Planned Parenthood.
No way.
Yep. Rainbow this, Gay, Lesbian, Straight Education Network, ACLU, you name it. You name the far left crazy organization that's destroying our kids and destroying our country. It was there. And I go, this doesn't have anything to do with teaching. I couldn't find a math manipulative or, books about the alphabet. I couldn't find anything. My husband couldn't find music stuff. So we go up to check in and we go, we think we're in the wrong, convention. Mm-hmm. We're here for the teacher union. Oh, you're in the right place. Welcome. And we were stunned. So they invite us up to these several different suites. Oh, you can go to all these different suites. We're having welcome receptions in these different suites. So my husband and I, we don't know what we're going to, our first time. We go up, Apollo, in these suites, in a fancy Marriott, by the way, free-flowing alcohol, all you want, the full bar, free, all this expensive food, escargot and that kind of stuff. And all they're doing is bashing people of faith, bashed us right to our face. I go, I'm a Christian. And they're like, because they assume we all hate God like they hate God. They assume we all believe in their agenda, right?
Give me an example. How did they bash?
Oh, they would just say negative things about Christians and conservatives. Oh, these Christians, they're so whatever, racist, or you know how they are. And it's been many years ago, so I don't remember the exact words, but this happened to us multiple times over the years, where they just bash you right to your face. They don't know you're a Christian, right? Or a Jew. I had a friend of mine that served on the union board with me who was a Jew, very strong conservative, and they'd cut him down right to his face too. Okay, they hate God. So, and I would say to them, well, I'm a Christian. And then they'd just kind of act awkward, right? Nobody ever stuck up for themselves, I guess. Just let them treat them like dirt. So anyway, we were disgusted that a bunch of teachers are funding this. Off the backs of hardworking teachers, these union leaders are partying. Mm-hmm. They're living a limousine lifestyle. Okay, this was just California. There's 50 states. Okay, there's 50 states. These people are partying all year. There's 52 weeks in a year. They're having an annual meeting in every state all year, every weekend. They're dining on fancy food. They're drinking all the alcohol off the backs of hardworking teachers. I found out these union leaders, president, vice president, secretary, treasurer of the NEA and the AFT, they're making over $500,000 a year, and some of them get housing allowance on top of that. They get car loans from the union, all off the backs of hardworking teachers. kindergarten teachers trying to teach kids how to read. So most teachers don't know this, but I saw it with my own eyes. So, and then, there's a million more stories I could tell you, but it was corrupt as could be, and communist as could be. They're just trying to destroy us and our kids. So while we were at a CTA annual meeting, I'm sitting in a room, there's about 300...
CTA is California Teachers Association.
California Teacher Association, yep. And this was during the Obama administration, so it was probably like 2009, 2010, I don't remember. That's when I was serving as a union rep. And we're about 300 of us eating breakfast, and it was Q&A. National Education Association leaders and California Teacher Association leaders up on the platform, including Lily Eskelsen Garcia, horrible woman who used to be the president of NEA. Very mean, bullied all of us. So they're up on the stage and they say, oh, we're opening it up to Q&A. Okay, we're all members of supposedly a union that's supposedly representing us, and now they're giving us a chance to have Q&A. This brave teacher stands up. She says, I'm representing my teachers from whatever district in California, and we're very concerned about the way you're spending our dues money on politics. We don't want to fund politics, far left politics. We don't want to fund this. We just want to teach. We want you just to represent us.
Get her out.
Oh, it was worse than that. But yes, that's the idea. All of a sudden, all these thuggish people that were mixed into the crowd surrounded her. Like this. Physically surrounded her with their arms crossed like this and very intimidating looks on their faces, right? Towering over her. The ones on the stage, including Lily Eskelsen Garcia, they did the same thing from the stage, okay? I kid you not, all 300 of us were dead silence, okay? It was, you could feel, it was visceral.
Hunger Games.
Yes, yes. Okay, so we're all sitting there, and then they start from the stage. If you don't agree with our politics, you're a bigot, you're a racist, okay, this is 2009, 2010, okay? The teacher unions write the talking points for the left, so we always heard things long before everybody else. You're a this, you're a that, you're a hater, blah, 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 blah. They just totally pummeled her with their words. Now, I'm very ashamed to admit that I sat there glued to my chair, stunned. I should have got my butt out of the seat and I should have gone over and stood with that woman, but I didn't. My dad always taught me you stand up for the weak. We always stood up for the weak. Kids bullied in school, we stood up for them. But in this situation, it was so intimidating. My birthright was to stand up, and I'm sitting there stuck to my chair. Couldn't will myself up. Everyone around me, I knew everyone at my table. They were all Christians except one who was a Jew. People of faith, kind people who didn't believe in bullying people like that. And none of them did anything or said anything. I left that event so deeply traumatized, and I asked God for forgiveness, and I asked him to give me the courage to stand up to this evil regime known as so-called teacher unions. So that was a turning point for me. Many other things happened that were straw that broke the camel's back, but that was a huge turning point. So in 2012, October 2012, I'm just doing my Bible study every morning, that first time in the morning. And the study asks a question: is there something you believe God's been asking you to do, but you haven't done it? You're afraid, whatever. Yes. What is it? I'm supposed to be writing. I'm supposed to be writing for his glory, I think I wrote. And then it said, well, will you obey him and do it? Apollo, I did not answer the question right away. I prayed for 3 days on that question because I didn't want to be Jonah in the belly of a fish. I didn't want to tell God yes and then not do it, right? So I prayed and I prayed. I said, if I write to expose these wicked unions, they're going to do this to me. Mm-hmm. They're going to do this to my kids. Okay, my son was in high school, a public high school, and my older son was in a public university, a baseball player on a baseball scholarship. I didn't want their lives, I want them to stand up. I want them to know how to stand up. But I didn't want them, they're going to do this to them. They're going to, I gave God the whole list of everything that was going to go wrong. And I don't hear voices, just that still small voice. And he says to me, in my heart, of course they're going to do those things. And here's what you do. Here's how you handle it. And I don't even remember what he told me, but it gave me peace like a river. I can do that. I can do that. So I went down and answered the question after 3 days. Yes, I'll do it. So the very next day, I had my first opportunity to write an editorial just for my local newspaper. Okay, my goal was get the information to the Orange County Register because I live in Orange County, right? Oh, and I forgot to tell you, one of the things God used to give me the courage, you know that story of the widow's mite? It's only 2 verses long. Have you ever heard of the widow's mite? Well, it's a powerful story. It's from the New Testament. And Jesus sees this woman, and he says to his disciples, do you see that? He points her out. Do you see that woman right there? She just gave 2 mites. That's like 2 pennies. Mm-hmm. She just gave 2 mites.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, she gave more than anybody else because she gave everything she had.
Everything she had, yes.
So, because I had said to God, I have nothing to give. I'm a kindergarten teacher. I don't know anybody in media. I have 0 contacts. I don't, and he said to me, just give me your 2 mites. The rest of it's my problem. That took so much stress off me. Oh, I don't have to solve the problems of the world. I just have to do my part.
Because you don't bully little people of God.
That's right. That's right. I love that. So I obeyed him. I wrote my first editorial, having no idea how to even submit it. I knew how to submit to letters of the editor because they tell you how to do that in the paper. I had no idea how to submit an editorial. I sent it to to the editor with this lame note. I don't know how to submit this editorial, but I'm sick and tired of reading in your pages that the unions are so great when they're not. They're bullying me. They're lying. Please, please print this. They printed it. And then it got picked up all over the nation by online sites because apparently they'd never heard a teacher speak out and say these unions are horrible. So it just was everywhere. So wow. So within 6 months, I kept writing. I kept submitting editorials. Within 6 months of that first editorial, I was lead plaintiff in a federal lawsuit heading to the U.S. Supreme Court suing the California Teachers Association and the National Education Association and our local unions and our local superintendents. There were 10 plaintiffs from 10 different school districts. We sued our superintendents. It wasn't anything personal. It was to stop the collection of dues through paycheck deductions. We thought that was unconstitutional for the taxpayer to pay for the collection of dues and then hand it over to a private organization, especially one that's destroying the country. So I'm in this, my goal, I just say this because when God asks us to do something and we do it, he shows up. Mm-hmm. Who was it? His name is... Shame on me, one of our founders, Adams, John Quincy Adams. He said, duty is ours, results are God's. And that is so true because I just thought, okay, I'll get one editorial in the Orange County Register. Now I'm headed to the U.S. Supreme Court as the lead plaintiff. Okay, now I've got media training and I'm out on, all these news stations and writing more, and I couldn't believe it. And it was a joy. It was a joy to do it. The number one question people asked me, are you afraid for your life? Of course. Of course. When it takes courage to do something, it's because it's scary, right? But God took care of us.
And it's even more scary when you ask those questions.
Yeah.
Are you scared of... I never thought of this.
I know.
Should I?
Isn't it true?
What are you doing?
Isn't it true? People do that all the time. But, thank God had given me the peace. My poor husband had nightmares through the whole case. He had nightmares that people were chasing me off the road or trying to kill me. He doesn't have nightmares anymore. But thank God we got to do that. So I told you in 1977, every government employee was forced as a condition of employment to fund unions. And the so-called teacher unions are collecting around $5 billion annually, tax-free. Just the teacher unions. They spend it all to destroy us.
$5 billion.
$5 billion with a B annually. And right now we're digging through all their 990s to get the exact number because I bet it's even bigger. That's an estimate based on, all the stuff we know. So we're actually digging. But $5 billion, that's just one. That's just the education. Okay? Why did we all get locked down and put masks on our faces, totally non-scientific and all these... The 1977, everybody was forced. Well, by God's grace, on my birthday, June 27, 2018, every government employee in this country was freed from forced unionism at the U.S. Supreme Court. That's what we were fighting for. So now, 0 American citizens are forced to pay a government union. 0. They don't have to give them 1 penny. The unions still lie to them and say they do, but they don't. Unfortunately, the unions are still the monopoly bargaining agent. They're still in there. There's still somebody else needs to sue them to kick them out completely. Or even better, let's just make it so that unions are illegal again, because they should be illegal. Government unions, they're destroying us. But anyway, nobody has to pay them anymore. But Apollo, right after that, well, right after our case was heard and all of that, I left the classroom. I still love my students. I'd still love to have a paycheck. I don't have a paycheck anymore. I left the classroom because I knew it was my job to get the word out to the American people that they no longer have to pay these wicked people. Because do you know, the majority of government employees are still paying them. They're still paying them. They still think the union is their savior, and the unions, because it gives them a pay and pension, right? No. Your government union is destroying you. They're destroying your freedoms. They're destroying your children. They're transgendering your children. They're sexualizing your children. And if they're able to get if they're able to get Kamala in and get their whole communism going, you'll lose everything. Your pension won't be there for you. Maybe you'll get 10% of it. Maybe you'll get nothing. So it's time for people to awaken, to look, stop funding the evil. I mean, they're literally funding a satanic agenda. And they think that it's good, that they're doing something good. So that's my job, is to get out and to speak the truth, that you don't have to pay them anymore, and please don't pay them anymore. If you're a person of faith, talk to God about it. He'll convict you that you shouldn't pay them anymore, because it's a satanic agenda. So that's all I do, and that's why they shadow ban me. And I'll mention this. When I was shadow banned, it was still Twitter, right? Meta and Twitter. I'm still shadow banned on X. But it's because we can't get a hold of anybody. We've tried so hard to break through, to get a hold of their tech, whoever, and we can't. And my son, who works for SpaceX, I'm like, could you reach out to Elon? And he doesn't want to put his job on the line. So we're just praying that we can somehow reach Elon or somebody in his circle, because I know they would free us. Elon hates those unions, and his oldest son was transgendered in his school. And it's the so-called teacher unions who are pushing that transgender agenda into our schools and into our country. And so I know he would love us, because we're fighting the very things he hates. We just need his attention and help getting freed there. So that's my story. That's how I got into this battle.